Murdoch and the chickens. One morning, Emily was taking a goods train to Barrow-in-Furness. She was enjoying her fast morning run when she saw something on the line. "Ooh!" she wailed. "Driver, stop!" Her driver applied the brakes, but there, standing in front of Emily, was a cow munching her breakfast of grass. Soon Emily's driver and fireman went to call for help. And it wasn't too long until Edward arrived with a cattle truck and a brake van, and some of the farmers were trying to shoo the cow off the line. Just then Murdoch bustled in. "Poor old Emily," he laughed. "Being delayed by a cow? That's so unreliable." "It's not my fault," shouted Emily, but Murdoch had already been and gone. A few moments later, the cow was removed. Edward steamed out of the main line, and Emily puffed away. That night, Murdoch came back to the shed telling the other engines all about Emily's experience with a cow. "And when she stopped," laughed Murdoch, "she was so afraid of a cow." Emily was so fed up, and she had enough with Murdoch. Soon Neville could see that Emily was feeling down. "It's not your fault," said Neville. You did well with that cow. Besides, I had the same issue as you did too. You're really useful, Emily." Emily began to feel better, but then Murdoch started boasting. I would get rid of animals out of my way any day," he said. "While I recall some boastful engine being late by a cow," said Molly. "I wonder who that was." Murdoch was red in the face. I don't want to talk about it," he said. And if I were you, I would clear off from the subject," he said. But then Emily knew she was too tired to argue, so she went to sleep feeling unwell. The next morning, Murdoch was taking an express train from the mainland to Barrow-in-Furness. He was excited about this. Murdoch was going on so well, but then there was trouble. "Oh!" he groaned, and his driver applied his brakes. In front of Murdoch was some chickens, groaned Murdoch. "That's all I'm needing." "I'm sorry," apologised the farmer to Murdoch's driver and fireman. "Those white little buggers escaped from my farm last night, and I can't even get to shoot them. Now I'm never gonna get them back in." "Don't worry," said Murdoch's driver and fireman. "We'll help, and then we'll get out of here." "Thank you," said the farmer. They tried shooing them off, but it was no good. Please let's not let it be another engine. Please let's not let it be another engine, wished Murdoch. But then he heard a familiar whistle. Being stranded by some little animals, eh, Murdoch?" said Molly. "Not polite, isn't it?" This made Murdoch very cross and blew steam at the chickens, but the chickens were used to it and started eating the grass. At last, the chickens were out of the way, and Murdoch was on his way. Murdoch was getting very late indeed, and was not happy at all. Meanwhile, back at the big station, all the other engines have already heard of Murdoch's experience, and they all began to laugh about it, especially Emily, And then, she continued, he began to stop because he was afraid of running over some little chickens, she went on, and it made all the other engines laugh. Later, Murdoch was still grumpy as usual after his incident. By the time he arrived at the big station, Sir Handel and Donald were already there. Sir Handel was just waiting for his ride home when he already saw Murdoch. "Look, Donald," he whispered. "What?" asked Donald. Here's Mr. Big Orange Rail Hog," whispered Sir Handel, and Donald and Sir Handel laughed, but Murdoch did not find this amusing at all. His driver uncoupled him from his coaches, and Murdoch clunked sadly out of the station and back home.